Good morning. Being 9 a.m., I'll call to order the McHenry County Board Committee of the Whole meeting of February 12th, 2026. And Mr. Smith will lead us in the pledge this morning.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kathy, will you please call the roll?
Pamela Altoff. Here. Carolyn Campbell. Here. John Collins. Here. Joseph Gaudemoller. Terry Greeno. Here. Eric Hendricks. Carl Kaminsky.
Present.
James Kearns. Here. Dina Krieger. Matthew Kunkel. Here. Brian Sager. Michael Shorten. Here. Michael Scala. Present. Larry Smith. Here. Patrick Sullivan. Here. Paul Thomas. Here. Gloria Van Hoff. Present. Tracy Von Bergen. Here. And Sherman Bueller.
Here. Having a quorum, will proceed. It's that time of year again, so today we have the State of the County presentation by myself. You have to listen to me for a couple more minutes than usual today, but we've got some great stuff to report, so enjoy. Good morning. It is once again my great honor to present the annual State of the County Address for 2026 to the people of McHenry County and the McHenry County Board. A new year always brings changes, and I'd like to start my address by recognizing county employees who retired at the end of 2025. We said goodbye to County Administrator Peter Austin, whose professionalism, dedication, and unwavering commitment during his 20 years on the job helped shape McHenry County into the best-run county in Illinois. Veterans Assistance Commission Superintendent Mike Iwanicki stepped down after 27 years of service, during which time he transformed the VAC, expanding its reach and impact. And after almost 40 years as McHenry County's public defender, Mark Cook, called the quiet powerhouse by his coworkers, retired. It's my pleasure to recognize the talented team that has stepped up to fill their shoes. The County Board wisely chose Scott Hartman, who has served since 2014 as our Deputy County Administrator, to take on the top role. Nate Johnson, an Army veteran who served in Iraq, now heads the VAC after a decade as Assistant Superintendent of the Kane County VAC. And just last Saturday, Richard Behoff took over as Public Defender, bringing more than 3 decades of experience in public defense and an extensive history of service. Their dedication, expertise, and longtime knowledge of McHenry County are a tremendous asset, and they've hit the ground running. County administration, the VAC, and the Public Defender's Office are in very good hands. This is the 6th State of the County address I've given since taking office. This year, I come to you from the Foglia Center for Advanced Technology and Innovation at McHenry County College. This state-of-the-art facility, which opened in fall of 2024, features 45,000 square feet of open concept class space, outfitted with the newest equipment and technology to teach skilled trades and innovation. The Foglia Center is training the next generation of manufacturing expertise, providing McHenry County employers with trained workers and a place for established workers to learn new skills. This jewel in McHenry County's crown was one of the first recipients of a grant through our Advanced McHenry County initiative, which invested almost $30 million in federal American Rescue Plan Act funding directly into thoughtful and impactful programs that will tangibly improve our communities. The County Board allocated $1.69 million to cover more than half the cost of the Foglia Center's equipment. For many years, McHenry County has embraced cooperation and collaboration among governments, and the Foglia Center is just one example of many. Even though county government accounts for only about 6.5% of residents' property tax bills, we have always taken savings and efficiencies very seriously. And as we enter 2026, which presented McHenry County with its most challenging budget in a long time, we will be seeking even more opportunities to cut costs and increase efficiencies while continuing to provide the services our residents expect. As I said last year, while fiscal prudence is always important, there's nothing that contributes to tax relief more than robust economic growth. In 2025, we joined our McHenry County Economic Development Corporation partners in helping lay the groundwork for job creators to come to McHenry County. We enthusiastically supported the City of McHenry's application for Illinois' DCEO Regional Site Readiness Program funding to develop a 232-acre property on Route 31 into a new industrial park. It represents one of McHenry County's most significant contiguous development opportunities for large-scale industry. And we continue to work hand in hand with the EDC and our municipal partners to get water and sewer service extended from Marengo to the full I-90 and Route 23 interchange to open this area up for economic development. Last year, we secured a $3 million grant from the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity toward the project, and we have followed up with a secondary grant application. I can't say enough how important the MCEDC is to job growth and attracting employers. While the large-scale projects I just mentioned are important, it's small and medium-sized businesses that power the nation's and our county's economic engine. And in 2025, the MCEDC, to borrow a sports phrase, took their game to the next level. In August, the MCEDC, in partnership with the Illinois Small Business Development Center, unveiled the new Strong Transitions program. This program provides advising for small business owners to have a succession plan if they plan to retire, and offers training and support for budding entrepreneurs to buy these businesses and carry on their legacy. This visionary program merges the pathways of business owners and emerging entrepreneurs with the tools and guidance needed to keep successful local businesses operating and thriving across generations. And guess what? This program is yet another supported by an advanced McHenry County grant. You're going to hear a lot about that in my address. The MCEDC is a key ally in our mission to bring new employers and new jobs to our skilled workforce. And as long as we're here at the Foglia Center, let's visit the MCEDC's new home. In the spirit of cooperation and efficiency, the MCEDC has relocated to the MCC campus, alongside the Small Business Development Center. Bringing both of these agencies under one roof creates a resource powerhouse for our business community, with the added bonus of getting to show off all of MCC's job training and trades programs for employers seeking to locate here. The Foglia Center isn't the only way that MCC is helping to train the next generation of skilled manufacturing workers. The Outstanding Manufacturing Summer Internship Program is entering its 5th year, stronger than ever. A $717,300 advanced McHenry County grant to MCC and the Manufacturing Pathways Consortium provided the seed money to launch this program, which partners area high school students curious about manufacturing careers with manufacturers offering 10-week paid summer internships. Since its creation, the program has provided more than 360 opportunities for McHenry County high school students to gain valuable skills and learn about careers in manufacturing. If you have a 16 to 18-year-old living in McHenry County, the application window for this summer project has just opened. You can learn more and apply online through the Manufacturing Pathways Consortium website at mfgpathways.com. We can't, of course, gauge economic development solely on business growth. In my 2024 address, I proudly reported that a home construction boom was underway with the pandemic behind us. McHenry County gained residents in the 2020 U.S. Census, and our real estate market is going strong as more people realize that McHenry County is a great place to live. Almost 1,200 housing units were built in McHenry County in 2025, and as of today, another 871 units have been proposed, and that number is sure to grow. Here in McHenry County, we realize that it's not just important to build new housing. We have to do our best to ensure that our workforce can afford to live here. It's vital that the people who patrol our streets, educate our children, produce our food, staff our businesses, and manufacture goods to ship to customers worldwide can pay their rent or mortgage and continue to enrich our communities with their presence. This doesn't just help individuals and families. This is very much an economic issue, given that employers look at housing costs when they decide to locate or expand. In 2024, our Workforce Housing Work Group concluded that McHenry County faces a shortage of housing that's affordable for jobs located here. Building on this, in 2025, in collaboration with the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning and our municipal partners, we released our Housing Readiness Action Plan to further support workforce housing attainability. The availability of workforce housing in McHenry County is important, and we're going to continue working to ensure that our workforce has quality housing options right here close to their jobs. While a robust economy, good jobs, and good homes are very important, it's equally important to do what we can to improve the health and welfare of our residents. And 2025 was a big year in that regard. Last spring, we achieved our long-sought goal to add a memory care wing to our award-winning Valley High Nursing and Rehabilitation Home. After 2 years of construction, the doors opened on Heart of the Valley, a 21-bed, state-of-the-art facility that helps meet the growing need for senior memory care. In a testament to our fiscal prudence, the $4 million project came in under budget and was paid for entirely with existing funds. Next month, work is expected to finish on the renovation of the Department of Health Annex in Crystal Lake that houses the Animal Control and Adoption Center and a health clinic that offers immunizations, WIC, the State Breast and Cervical Cancer Screening Program, and other services. This renovation will ensure that our health department can assist more people in need more efficiently. For example, a drive-through is being built that will make it easier to offer immunizations and other high-demand services. McHenry County looks after its less fortunate and indigent. The examples I just cited are two of many. In 2025, our health department stepped up its annual program to help veterans in a big way. Since 2020, the Department of Health has participated in Operation Dropbox, which encourages people to donate food and other household necessities for veterans at drop boxes located throughout McHenry County. Every year has brought in more goods and more participants than the last. And last year, our Department of Health joined forces with the Lake County Health Department to do Operation Dropbox together, bring a new level of collaboration and community involvement. In McHenry County alone, a record 92 organizations participated, collecting almost 7,000 pounds of donations. Combined with Lake County, a total of 11,427 pounds of goods were collected. That's more than 5.5 tons for our county's respective veterans. And I have no doubt that this year will be just as successful as last year. In fact, word has it that even more county health departments may be joining in. Thank you to our health department, the health department's Medical Reserve Corps for sorting out and packing the donations, and our Division of Transportation for collecting the goods and shipping them to Veterans Path to Hope, which distributes them to the veterans and their families. Collaboration funded through Advanced McHenry County brought about 2 other sustainable programs to help our most vulnerable. An $853,125 grant to Harvard Unit School District 50 helped them open their new Etched Center, which houses a transitional learning program that prepares 18 to 21-year-old students for adult life, allowing them to live more independently. And just last month, the Child Advocacy Center of McHenry County, which helps children who are victims of severe physical or sexual abuse, cut the ribbon on their forever home, which they bought in part by leveraging some of its $500,000 Advanced McHenry County grant to support its mission. Here in McHenry County, we prioritize public safety. A great county is one where people and property are safe. We make thoughtful investments in public safety each year, and in 2025, it was no different. In May, just as summer boating season kicked off on the Fox River and the Chain of Lakes, the McHenry County Sheriff's Office Marine Unit cut the ribbon on a new facility, compliments of the city of McHenry. Again, in the spirit of collaboration, county government and the Sheriff's Office worked with the city of McHenry and McHenry Community High School District 156 to enter into an intergovernmental agreement to get it done. Another great example of McHenry County's dedication to collaboration is our police social work program. which supports the Sheriff's Office and 17 other participating county police departments with full-time social workers to help bridge the gap between law enforcement and McHenry County's network of social service providers. In 2025, the National Association of Counties honored us with an Achievement Award. This program has improved outcomes and reduced repeated police responses, and this national recognition is well-deserved. This groundbreaking program is far from the only way that law enforcement and our courts go the extra mile to protect our most vulnerable. In 2025, our Circuit Clerk's Office implemented a Hope Card program, which makes it easier for residents with orders of protection to report violations. This simple laminated card can be presented to law enforcement to verify an existing order of protection, and prior to this, people had to present the actual stack of court documents. McHenry County was one of the early counties to implement this program. Thank you to Circuit Clerk Kathy Keefe for making it all happen. In my 2025 address, I had the pleasure of introducing you to Honey, who joined the staff of the 22nd Judicial Circuit as a facility dog, where she provides emotional support to the public, employees, and attorneys. Honey's been joined in the hallway of the Michael J. Sullivan Judicial Center by Louie, a fellow Golden Retriever who joined the courthouse probation staff. In July, having completed their training, they were officially sworn into their roles by Chief Judge Michael Federer to applause from their coworkers. Honey and Louie have made such a difference to so many people, and they're a welcome addition to county staff. McHenry County has long strived to make sure that taxpayer dollars are wisely spent and go as far as they can. In one way, McHenry County shines in that regard is improving and maintaining our roads, infrastructure, and mass transit. Residents of McHenry County, like Cook and other collar counties, pay a special sales tax to support mass transit. The most significant change to mass transit since the 1974 creation of the Regional Transportation Authority took place at the end of 2025 with a new law that replaces the RTA with a new Northern Illinois Transit Authority that will oversee Metra, PACE, and the Chicago Transit Authority. McHenry County followed the process every step of the way as the General Assembly debated and modified the legislation. I personally gave testimony to both the House and Senate Transportation Committees and actively worked with our legislators to voice our concerns that McHenry County residents get their fair representation and a fair share of future mass transit improvements, such as prioritizing the relocation of the Metra Union Pacific Northwest Rail Yard from Crystal Lake to Woodstock. County staff and I will continue to keep an eye on the implementation of this legislation. McHenry County always seeks federal and state funding to bring our tax dollars home, especially for road projects. And I'm happy to report that we recently secured $2.25 million in federal transportation funding for future safety improvements to Charles Road north of Woodstock. We've been a leader in mass transit at the local level, starting with the visionary MC Ride Dial-A-Ride service that offers people, especially our seniors, an affordable and dependable paratransit system that can take them anywhere in McHenry County. It was the first program of its kind in the collar counties, and it continues to succeed. It was my privilege last year to tell you about the creation of Connect, an on-demand program that complements MC Ride through ride-sharing services like Uber. Connect offers county residents who have RTA ride-free, reduced fare, or ADA paratransit cards the ability to travel anywhere in the six-county Chicagoland region, as long as their start or destination point is in McHenry County. Both MC Ride and Connect have seen continued success. In the 12-month period between November 2024 and October 2025, more than 88,000 trips were taken using MC Ride, with another 23,762 taken through Connect. While both services are a partnership with Pace Suburban Bus, Connect is also a public-private partnership offering an affordable and private sector solution to provide accessibility for people. MC Ride and Connect will only get more successful as word continues to spread about them. Work continues on the second and final phase of the Randall Road Improvement Project to improve traffic flow and ease congestion on the important economic corridor that runs from Crystal Lake through Lake in the Hills to Algonquin. Randall Road is being widened and improved between Alexandra Boulevard and Crystal Lake to Acorn Drive and Lake in the Hills. Improvements include more travel lanes, improved signal intersections, a sidewalk, and a shared use path to link bike and pedestrian paths in surrounding neighborhoods. As a testament to our fiscal discipline and collaboration, outside funding is covering 80% of the cost, with the remaining 20% coming from existing county fund balances. We had the money courtesy of decades of fiscal prudence, and we didn't have to borrow or raise taxes to pay for it. McHenry County is a great place to live, work, and raise a family. And just as importantly, it's a great place to play. It's a tourist destination offering wonderful places and wide open spaces, blending the best of both suburban and rural. Each year, more and more people learn about us, and thanks to our partners at Naturally McHenry County, I can bring the receipts. In 2024, visitors to McHenry County generated $353.4 million in spending, a 2.7% increase over the previous year. That spending, in turn, supported almost 2,200 tourism and hospitality jobs and generated more than $16.2 million in local government tax revenue, which marked a 4.5% increase from the previous year. These numbers grow every year, thanks to the dedicated staff of Naturally McHenry County. In April, they relocated their visitor center from Huntley to the old courthouse center on the historic Woodstock Square. It's spacious, it's beautiful, and it's smack in the center of the county. And to borrow the marketing slogan of Enjoy Illinois, it's right in the middle of everything. They've taken maximum advantage of their new location. They hold Saturday hours to attract shoppers at the Woodstock Farmers Market. And given that the farmers market is consistently ranked one of the best in the Midwest, that's a lot of potential foot traffic. Naturally, McHenry County also decided to use its new space to help local businesses by holding maker pop-ups, giving local entrepreneurs the opportunity to promote and showcase their products. In last year's address, I praised Naturally McHenry County's ingenious and popular specialty trails, which showcase the businesses and attractions that make us unique. They come in the form of a challenge. Using the Naturally McHenry County app, participants check in at locations and receive a locally made prize for completing them. Its craft beverage trail, showcasing our award-winning breweries and distilleries, is a big hit, as is the coffee and tea trail, featuring locally owned coffee and tea shops, and the tacos, tamales, and tortas trail, featuring Harvard's best Mexican restaurants. Last year, Naturally McHenry County created the Bloody Mary Trail. 17 local bars and restaurants participated, showing off their unique takes on the classic cocktail. They also created 2 family trails, specifically designed to give children and families great opportunities for summer vacation fun. The McHenry Kid Venture, featuring summer fun opportunities in the city of McHenry, and the Cary Uncovered Challenge, showcasing the many parks and nature areas in and around Cary and Fox River Grove. Naturally, McHenry County constantly develops innovative ideas to draw tourism dollars here, and their efforts are being noticed far and wide. It's my pleasure to report that Naturally McHenry County will be hosting the Midwest Travel Network Annual Conference. The organization, consisting of travel writers, tourism professionals, content creators, and innovators looking to connect with awesome destinations, will converge on McHenry County this June. In its announcement, network organizers said that McHenry County perfectly captures the spirit of the Midwest, and it's a storyteller's dream destination. I couldn't agree more. A lot more people are going to learn about it. This awesome news is a great introduction to discuss the importance of how McHenry County government and its partner agencies communicate with residents. McHenry County works to be the most open and transparent government in Illinois. And every year, we find new ways to reach out to the people we serve, and 2025 was no exception. Our friends at the MCEDC created the Development Digest, a monthly e-newsletter that gives readers the inside scoop on business-centered programs and resources, upcoming events, local success stories, and more. Naturally, McHenry County has supplemented its monthly e-newsletter, The Insider, with weekly text alerts to let people know about awesome local weekend events. Also, the McHenry County Division of Transportation created a podcast, McHenry County on the Move, to give listeners an inside look at the division and what it does. You can find McHenry County on the Move on Spotify, and be sure to follow the DOT on Facebook and Instagram to learn when new episodes are released. Not all of our communication efforts are digital. Once again, county officials came together to hold a series of county-wide workshops to educate the public how to read and understand their property tax bills and to ensure that they are taking advantage of all the exemptions for which they are eligible. These workshops also educated property owners about the growing prevalence of property fraud and spread the word about a free service alerting people if a document is recorded in their name. Thank you to County Treasurer Donna Kurtz, County Clerk and Recorder Joe Thierio, and Chief Assessment Officer Alex Benitez for holding these outreach events. McHenry County government has the most dedicated and knowledgeable staff in Illinois, but a great county requires great plans. In 2025, we completed work on 2 plans that guide our decisions to ensure that they are the best for McHenry County and its residents. Every one of the accomplishments that I've touted in my address wouldn't have been possible with the guidance of the McHenry County Strategic Plan. The plan covers 6 categories vital to McHenry County's success: leadership and governance, economic and workforce development, health and social services, quality infrastructure, organizational advancement, and environmental sustainability. This isn't a plan that we craft and then set on a shelf to gather dust. It's a living document that gives us focus. We update the plan every 4 years, and after a lot of thoughtful work by county staff and the county board, we updated it to guide us into 2028. You can read the plan for yourself online or check our monthly reports on our progress towards meeting its many goals. Also last year, the Regional Planning Commission, with the help of county administration and staff, completed work on the 2050 Comprehensive Plan. The Comprehensive Plan is a non-binding document that guides land use, development and redevelopment, the preservation of natural, water, and agricultural resources, and more. Last month, the County Board formally adopted the plan, which will guide development through 2050, balancing residential and commercial growth with livability and preserving our open spaces. Thank you again to county staff, the Regional Planning Commission, Housel-Levite Associates, and the County Board Planning and Development Committee for their work in developing and renewing the plan. McHenry County government has been an example to follow in recognizing the tax burden that residents face. Over the past decade, while other governments have taxed to the maximum they could under the law, McHenry County government steadily reduced its levy from $79.4 million in 2017 to less than $65 million in 2025. Saving taxpayers tens of millions of dollars. Our decision to increase the levy by 2.9% to $67.7 million for 2026 was a hard decision to make after a decade of tax reduction, but a necessary one. And importantly, this increase was paired with almost $6 million in cuts and the reduction of 18 positions through consolidation and attrition. I said at the start of my address, but it bears repeating, McHenry County accounts for only 6.5% of total residential property tax bills. While property owners get their tax bill from McHenry County, the overwhelming majority of the taxes collected are distributed to other local units of government: school districts, municipalities, townships, etc. Property taxes account for less than 25% of county government revenues. We will continue day in and day out to find ways to do things more cost efficiently. We will constantly seek to partner with our municipalities and other county governments to work together to pool our resources and therefore reduce operating costs. We will continue to work with our state legislators and our congressional delegation to seek out every state and federal dollar possible. And of course, we will work hard to continue building our tax base and strengthening our local economy. I couldn't be prouder of everything we've accomplished together as I enter my 6th year as County Board Chairman. Besides accomplishing a lot, we've overcome a lot as well, celebrating our successes while tackling adversity head-on, never resting on our laurels, but constantly seeking to do things better and to do them more efficiently and economically. Always looking to keep costs down and seek out every possible way to lower our tax burden while maintaining quality services and doing all of this with openness and total transparency. McHenry County government is the most professional and most responsive county government in Illinois because the people of McHenry County are the best and they deserve nothing less. As we continue into the new year, let us all work together to make our government and our services even better. Thank you. Thank you, and thank you to our board for all the hard work that you do. Do any members have comments today? Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. The McHenry County, Conservation District is holding an open house for their 2040 comprehensive plan Wednesday, February 18th from 5 to 7 at the Lost Valley Visitor Center, and also on Wednesday, March 4th from 5 to 7 at the McHenry County College. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Altoff?
Thank you very much. I'm certain every single county board member read the public release by Nick Kubiak about the Department of Health launching their interactive naloxone access point maps. Well, I bet you what you didn't know is in 2025, the state of Illinois passed legislation requiring every library to carry naloxone. And our Department of Health went out and delivered to every library in McHenry County enough supply to meet that initiative. So again, just thank you to them.
Thank you. Seeing no further member comments, we'll move on to public comment. Just a reminder that this is your opportunity to address the board. You'll have 3 minutes in which to do so, at which time the red light would come on in front of me. If you haven't concluded your remarks, I would ask you to do so. First up will be Linda Haimbaugh, followed by James Ferretti.
I'm here today to talk about the proposed slaughterhouse in the village of Greenwood and Wonder Lake area. I respectfully urge you to affirm the Zoning Board of Appeals appeals denial of this petition. The ZBA's decision is firmly grounded in the county UDO and access standards, and the record supports that denial on multiple independent bases. First, the general development standards require that all lots front on a public or private street. The petitioner seeks a variance to reduce required frontage from 330 feet to 0, a complete elimination of road frontage. That is not a minor deviation. It removes a fundamental safeguard for safe and orderly development. The ZBA correctly found this request undermines basic access standards. Second, the petition does not demonstrate compliance with the principal use standards for food processing with animal slaughter. Those standards require that no slaughter operation be located within 500 feet of a residential zoning district or residential structure in an agricultural district. The record reflects the residents approximately 217 feet away. That required separation has not been met. Third, under section 16.20, the burden is on the petitioner to prove the use will not harm public health, safety, or welfare, that adequate access exists, and that the use is compatible with the area. That burden has not been satisfied. The record contains no valid access permit from the McHenry County Division of Transportation as required under Chapter 10.12, the county's access control and right-of-way management ordinance. Without lawful DOT approval, safe highway access has not been demonstrated. Further, the only proposed access of Greenwood Road runs through the middle of Greenwood Cemetery before continuing along a private easement for 1,550 feet. That configuration raises serious safety, traffic, and emergency access concerns. Adequate access is a threshold requirement, and it has not been established. Finally, the variance standards under the Section 16.20 are not met. Any hardship is self-created by the petitioner's design and location choices. It is not unique to the property, and granting a 0 frontage variance would undermine the purpose of the ordinance and public safety protections. The ZBA did not rely on general opposition. It relied on ordinance standards, staff analysis, DOT concerns, and formal input from the Village of Greenwood, the Village of Wonder Lake, and Greenwood Township, all indicating this is an unsuitable location. For these reasons, the denial rests on clear record-based ordinance grounds. You have a sound legal basis to affirm it. Thank you.
James Ferretti, followed by Elaine Barron.
Good morning. Again, my name is James Ferretti. I'm a resident in the Deer Pass subdivision. It's taken us over a year to get to this point. We've battled a lot. It's cost us a lot of money, a lot of our times. So I just want to thank you all for listening to us. I'm glad we're finally here. Everything's kind of been said a lot, but obviously the zoning board has denied it, rightfully so. It did not meet any of the standards, majority of the standards. The county, or the Greenwood Township voted against it, and then the president of Wonder Lake also has voiced his official letter, submitted that he's against it as well. So clearly it does not need to be here. Again, it does not support our community. We are in McHenry County. We care about our county. We care about our people. We care about our neighbors. We care about the environment. He stated under oath that this will not take in any other farms, so it does not help any other farms in McHenry County. He does not even live in McHenry County, so he's just using this as his dumping ground. It will not increase any more jobs for any McHenry County residents. He won't even use McHenry County, anyone else besides his own employees, to build this facility. And it is an industrial slaughterhouse. We've proven that. So it's just, again, we're here because we care. And that's I don't know what else to say. Just want to say thank you for letting us speak, and hopefully, there's no reason for it to pass at this point. It's proven without a doubt, so thank you.
Elaine Barron, followed by Jacob Traum.
Good morning. My name is Elaine Barron. I am a resident of Wonder Lake, and I am here to speak on the subject of the slaughterhouse. The gentleman that wants to build this has proposed a $250,000 building that seems to not provide enough protection and enough up-to-date facilities for running a slaughterhouse. $250,000 for you need a massive ventilation system. You have to have space for the animals. This just does not seem to be a proper building that he wants to construct here. Second of all, he has no experience in running a slaughterhouse or working in a slaughterhouse, or even I don't believe he has any knowledge of what it takes. He said he's going to take some classes to learn how to do this. I think if you're going to be in charge of the slaughterhouse, you need a lot more education and experience than just taking a few classes. The employees that he wants to have are currently the employees that he has in his orchards that are there on the same property. So what kind of training are they going to have? Is he going to train them? Are they going to take classes? Just seems to raise a lot of questions about this. As was mentioned, the access road to go to the proposed slaughterhouse runs by the Greenwood Cemetery, which I think is probably insulting to a lot of people that have loved ones buried in the cemetery. And as you may be aware, the Zoning Board of Appeals voted down his conditional use permit. And so with all of this information in mind, I'm asking you to vote against his conditional use permit for the slaughterhouse. Thank you.
Jacob Traum, followed by Patricia Murray.
How's it going? My name is Jacob. I think it's safe to say that I love to eat, as we can all see. But that having been said, Linda brought up some great points as to why this petition needs to be turned down for the slaughterhouse. A couple things I want to bring up. There was a real estate agent that had brought up some very good valid points, that even just having the, whether the slaughterhouse smells or not, but just having that stigma of a slaughterhouse less than a quarter mile from my house, as a matter of fact, can reduce the value of my house by 10%, sometimes in some cases 20% or more. So at the value of my house, I'm looking to take a $40,000 to $80,000 hit on the value of my house. That having been said, if you take in a 1.5 mile area, it could be a devaluation of 17 million plus in values of homes. Is that something that the county is willing to take in if they were to approve this? I don't know about you guys, but the value of my house, it says a lot for where I live. as the chairman said in his presentation today, people want to move to McHenry County. We want to have that area where people are glad to be and where we want to enjoy and live with our families and our friends. The UDO was not met with regards to his petition, and between the loss of value of neighboring area as well as the not met stipulations of the UDO, I do encourage the county board to vote down this petition. Thank you very much.
Patricia Murray.
Good morning. It's good to see the board today. My name is Patricia Murray. I'm a project developer with Arena Renewables, and I'm here representing our Opal Solar project, which has a zoning ID Z25-0100. This is a small 2-megawatt community solar project located just northwest of Crystal Lake along Country Club Road. It's zoned light industrial. It's surrounded by warehouses and a railroad track. The project received full ZBA approval last month. One neighbor came to speak out. They weren't speaking in opposition. They just had some clarifying questions. There's only a couple of residences within 1,000 feet of the project, and the perimeter of the project that does face those houses will be densely screened with vegetation and landscaping. It's also worth noting that this used to be a commercial tree nursery that's since been abandoned. It's no longer in use. So we did do a tree survey and found that there's 1,065 non-native trees that are no longer sellable. So we plan to remove them. They're mostly red cedar. And there were only 14 notable tree species. They were mature oaks. And as a part of our ZBA approval, we've agreed to keep 7 of those along the northern perimeter of the property. So we plan to remove them off-site, and then we'll replace them with pollinator-friendly vegetation, which will help water retention, biodiversity, aesthetics. So with all these things being considered, we'd like to ask the board to approve our conditional use permit. Thank you.
That concludes the public comment portion of our meeting. Next, we have under reports and presentations, internal and budget controls presented by Carrie Weiss, our CFO, Shannon Teresi, County Auditor, and Donna Kurtz, our County Treasurer. Maybe not the treasurer.
Okay, good morning. Let me get this. I'm Carrie Wise, Shannon Teresi, the county auditor, and Donna Kurtz, our treasurer, unfortunately had to be out of town, so I will be presenting her section, and then if there's any follow-up questions, we can follow up with her as needed. So kind of the point of this presentation is just to be very high level, and we'll be brief, because there was a lot of questions and comments that came up during last year's budget presentation, you know, that I think this presentation will address. And you know, I know, especially for the new board members, you know, you went through your first budget cycle. There was a lot thrown at you. So hopefully this will kind of bring things back full circle. So you can see, you know, some of the terms and things we use are really, you know, stuff that we live every day, but we just want to make sure that as we start talking about the budget process for 27, you know, this is, you know, kind of in the back of your mind, and we can do questions. So I'll kind of go through my part first, then Shannon's going to address some of the things that she sees in her office, and then, as I said, I'll go through Donna's section. But really, I think it's important, I asked them to join me, is because our 3 offices really work well together. And I think it's a big strength that we have. So, kind of celebrating that too. I was also addressing any questions. Okay, so as I said, we'll go through budget controls, some of the internal controls in Shannon's office, and then the treasurer's function, with the bank side. So really basic, we get this question a lot, and the reason that I put these particular dimensions up on the screen is you will probably recognize these from resolutions. So again, it's helping to keep things, full circle. We give you these resolutions, 1 month at a time, then we roll things up and show it to you as the budget. So just kind of reiterating really the basic structure of our finance software and how that relates to the documents that you guys see. So our finance system is Microsoft Dynamics 365, and this is the basic dimension set that we use for everything. So the main account is the first one. They're always 6 digits. If it starts with a number, 3, 4, 5, 6, it's an expense. If it starts with a 0, 07, 08, it's a revenue. So the next is the object level 1, which is the level that we most often present to you guys as a board. So that is the category for those main accounts. And really what I tell board members, departments, is the main account is really for the departments and how they plan. We are always very specific when we say you don't code expenses based on where you have budget. You code based on the proper main account. And Shannon's office does a lot of enforcing with that. So it helps, when we're preparing next year's budget, we don't just look to be like, well, why is all of this here? And it's like, well, that's where the budget was, but we don't actually know, where we need to budget for the next year and so on. And then department, obviously our 32 departments. And then within those departments, there's divisions. And, we don't talk too much about divisions because that really is the level for the departments to try to manage, how they want to separate out things, how they do their planning. And then, of course, the fund. So any questions on this? This should all seem pretty familiar, but. Okay, so approved budget in D365. So the budget control is based on board control dimensions. And so when I say that, what exactly does that mean? So the board control dimensions are the object level, the department, and the fund. So that's why when we present things to you, they're rolled up into that level. So that doesn't mean that there's not more detail below that. But again, it's circling back to, if you have $5,000 in your 50s, we want to make sure that that $5,000 gets spread across the correct main accounts. And I'll show you an example where the system will pull from the 50s, even though an individual main account may be over budget. So budget revisions, how does that happen? I get that question a lot. So there are some things that can be done administratively to move things around. The 40s, the 50s, and the 60s, so contractual commodities and capital, we can move that administratively within the same fund and department. If someone, last year we brought the fixed asset policy forward, so there was a little bit of change in methodology. Maybe we had some things budgeted in commodities, but really with the new fixed asset policy, it becomes a capital. So to kind of, keep the housekeeping, we move that stuff administratively. But any actual increase to a budget, a movement between funds, or even departments within the same funds require a resolution. And that is something where, we'll get into D365 in a minute, where you can see how the system tracks that, and that is something that both our internal and external auditor have access to and do look at. I'm actually going to pull up D365. It might be easier to see. a little bit. So this is a tool within the system. I'm sorry, you guys won't be able to see these numbers. But I'll walk through what they are. So this is a tool, this is a report within the system. It's called budget analysis. And I would say that this is the most frequently used report by our department. So as you can see, here's the dimensions we talked about: fund, department, division, main account, and object level 1. These columns are original budget, revised budget, actual expenditure, and then some encumbrances. So like if you have a PO, it will put it in the encumbrance. So then this remaining budget just looks at revised budget minus actual minus encumbrance to see what's left. So this level here is, actually I'll go to Department 18. This here is on the most granular level looking at the main account. So you can see, this is last year's, that some of these main accounts are technically over budget, but that's where I was saying the system will look at, in this case, the 30s in totals, the 40s in totals. So it's really a good tool. You know, right when people call me and say they're over budget, this is always the first place I come to. But what is also nice is the original and revised budget, and actual as well. You can click on any of these and drill down. So if you can't remember why the budget changed or what resolution changed it, you know, we can go in and see. So this had no change in budget. This is just the initial original budget. And same with actual expenditures. You can drill down and you can look to see, you know, what is this for? What invoice did this come with? And, you know, there's other reports that you can, if you want to look at things in mass, but this is kind of a good way, like a good snapshot. Because one of the questions, I got it from several members during last year's budget process, was how do we ensure that departments don't overspend their budget? So we have parameters set up within the system to ensure that. But again, it's by the object level 1, which I think is probably the the main source of confusion. But really we use this tool. So any questions on that? Sorry, oh, come on. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about purchase order and invoice entry. Then I'm going to turn it over to Shannon where she can talk about her process. One thing that I know we're going to be talking about today, but for this particular presentation, I wanted to focus on invoice expense, employee reimbursement expense. But another major expense, obviously, that we have in the county is payroll. So payroll controls exist in our current payroll system, but that again is, the foundation for that is the board-controlled roster. And so there is controls in the payroll system to say, okay, we're adding a position, we're changing a position, and it's the same with how we do budget. You know, it has to be based on resolution or some other criteria that's approved, like in the salary administration policy. So the way payroll gets into D365 is, you know, the positions are set up in Kronos based on the board-controlled roster. Punches are recorded, other payroll functions are recorded. Department head approves it, and then it moves to payroll for processing. So then that expense is moved from Kronos into D365 with a journal entry. So again, I know we're going to be talking about it when we talk about resolutions, but just noting that this is an important distinction, that right now we're talking specifically about purchase orders and invoices. So first, just really quick, vendor maintenance. Vendor maintenance falls under the purchasing department because, again, you know, we talk about, you know, internal controls and making sure that, you know, who's ever changing vendors, it's based on a very set standards. And then who's ever changing the vendors isn't the one that's entering and approving invoices or doing the check run. So, you know, keeping the separation of duties, I think, is very important. So if there's any change to a vendor, that goes through purchasing. And then we're decentralized here with our AP process. So the departments get the invoice. Once work is done or the goods are received, the department enters it, the department head approves it, and then it goes to the county auditor's office. And all that is done within the system. So this is just a little example, and I'll send this presentation to you guys, of the workflow system within D365. And security is set up by department. So it moves through the process. And the nice thing about these workflows is even if one is recalled or stopped and restarted, we always have record of even the ones that stop, you know, or the ones that fail or whatever reason. They're all stored. We can find them based on this workflow ID. So after the final approval by the county auditor, then it goes into the check run queue, and that process is done by finance. And then lastly, once that process is done, the treasurer's office receives the funding report, moves money between funds based on that disbursement account, and then the checks go out. So another question that I got, D365 will not post an invoice that is in budget error. So this pink ribbon, it's small on here, anytime we see a red X, that's always a hard stop within the system. So even if the auditor's office approves it, which I know they wouldn't, but if they did, it puts it into a workflow error status, and then system admins get alerted. And so regardless of the user, because the user that's actually posting this into the check run is a D365 admin. So again, I just want to kind of reiterate that there's hard stops that we have set up. You know, and again, we'll talk about payroll in a minute, but it's essential, I think, when we have a decentralized AP process, that we have these controls in place, because, you know, I don't see every invoice. You know, and the system actually will look at budget for documents in draft as well. So sometimes departments will call and they'll say we're out of budget, and you go and look and they'll have like 5 invoices in draft. So then if you start deleting those, you know, then the budget error goes away. But yeah, I think it's important to note that. So, all right. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Shannon so she can talk about.
Thank you. I'm very petite, so standing behind a podium may not be wise. So the McHenry County Auditor's Office provides a tremendous value for the board. One of our key roles is enforcing the resolutions you guys pass and the purchasing ordinance. And one of kind of starting process is with the PO. That stands for purchase order. So our office approves purchase orders and also requisitions, which is another term for purchase orders, in the D365 system. And this is important that before we authorize a department to go out to buy goods, buy services, that they make sure they have the resolution, the board approval, or in some cases under 30,000 quotes. And so we review the quotes and make sure they are going with the lowest, most responsible bidder, or there's a strong business case if there's a reason not to go with the lowest, like past experience or they don't deliver goods and services on time or keep up with the contract. And I'm going to go really quickly through these. It's really important. We are independent, so we provide even an independent review on administration and their invoices that they process. Even the sheriff, the health department, we are the final review. And Carrie had a slide up earlier, and you could see the department entered the invoice, the department head or designated person approved it, and then it comes to our office to review.
it comes to a collection of all my staff, so we are approving nonstop to keep this process moving, and a different person in my staff will view it. So not the same person. In some cases, it could be sometimes the same person, but there's 5 or 6 of my staff reviewing invoices, and some review more than others. So big thing we do, fraud prevention, errors. Sometimes we have new people in the system and they're unfamiliar. We do extensive training, but we do catch a lot of errors, making sure we're paying off of invoices versus quotes. That's a common issue that we see. And so we do also verify segregation of duties to make sure a department head didn't enter an invoice and then approve it because maybe a staff was missing as well. And accuracy, we're providing, in many cases, we go back, everything is linked. We could go back to the contract, go back to the resolution to verify, does this make sense with what the board intended? Or if it's a project or grant, is this allowable under grant guidelines? So we are not rubber stamping. We do a very different, robust process, reviewing everything, and it creates tremendous value in the process on an hourly basis. We see it. Even reviewing what we receive from not-for-profits. We get a packet of 100 documents, making sure everything totals up and is correct from what we're reimbursing to the not-for-profit. And so we provide value every day on that process. Yeah, go ahead. And kind of the high-level topic areas, compliance and governance, and I mentioned grants, your ordinance, cost control, process improvement. We take, sometimes if we notice issues, we take the opportunity to meet with the department to discuss their internal controls and their process. And kind of one thing we've been doing differently is we're meeting with departments doing risk assessments over this year and next year to really understand their main objectives and what risks we have associated to those objectives. And we're documenting them in our internal audit software. So we have risks, internal controls, processes, all identified for that department. And it's a tool not just for finance or my office, but our external auditors that come in, but mostly management, so they know when they have new staff come in, why we do things the way we do. We have some of the processes in place to prevent risks, and risks to, that affect our key objectives, not just risks that have no impact, but risks that really impact the county objectives. So we're working on that process currently. And then, you know, we are available as a liaison, a free consulting service. I get conversations hourly basis with departments on how to do business, just making sure when we're paying for grants that we make sure we have the documentation to get reimbursed by either FEMA or the state at a later date, or if they come into audit, we're not gonna have to pay back money. We lead by example here in McHenry County. I say it time and time again, we wanna be the best and stay the best county in the state, and we are a resource for other counties as well. So just overall impact, we're protecting the county's taxpayer dollars, but it's a team effort, and that's why I think Carrie asked me here. We are constantly sharing feedback back and forth, what things we should be looking for, or hey, heads up on this invoice coming through, or as you do the check runs, please make sure this issue is prevented. We are 24/7 thinking of risks to the organization and how we can prevent it and do things differently. And I could hand things back to Carrie. Sure.
Yes, thank you. As I said in the beginning, we're going through this really fast because although I know we really enjoy the topic, it's more just high-level information for you guys. But please, if you have other questions, if you want to meet, you know, we could talk a lot about it. So I will pick up for the treasurer, and you know, I wish she was here because one thing as far as this process in D365 that I really want to give her big credit for is when she first took office, the bank reconciliation process was done outside of D365. And she and her staff really worked hard to, first off, catch up the bank reconciliation process within D365, but now to keep it going. And I kept telling them when they were working on the project is like, just, it will pay off, it will pay off. And so I think the biggest thing for that is, we have everything in D365 from the requisition process all the way through now to the bank reconciliation process. And so I really want to give Donna and her staff a lot of credit for getting that done because, first off, it helps save time, keeps things more accurate. But now our internal and external auditor, they can see the whole process. So that's really helpful. So the way that the treasurer's staff, their part in this process in the reconciliation is every entry in D365 on the general ledger side creates an entry into the treasurer's fund, which in our books is 999. And so the treasurer and her staff use Fund 999 at the end of the month. First they reconcile the banks based on a BAI2 file. If you think to your own personal checkbook, with the checks, like things are, the system actually does that, and then they look at anything that the system can't match. So the banks are reconciled, and then they look at 999 to make sure that we have a corresponding entry for everything that went in and out of the actual bank. So that way we know, if money went out of the bank, we have an approved expense in D365. And that happens every month. And I think that's something we don't really talk about a lot, but it's a really important process, because the treasurer can also do wires. And we've met a lot talking about the wire process, who can authorize wires, and the treasurer and her staff, they do not send wires without it being in D365. So again, just another, I think it's important to have this great communication, make sure everything is reconciled, transparent, and so on. Any questions on that? Oh, just a little side note to brag on them too. They have 85 bank accounts that they maintain, and that doesn't include the collector accounts. So then when we talk about the amount of funds that we have in the bank accounts, like, it's a really big job, and I think having everything in D365 makes it a lot easier on them and easier for us as well.
Ms. Van Hoff?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just had a question about what you were saying about D365 and having not having everything there. How did that work? I mean, I took a year of accounting so many years ago that is, I'm embarrassed to even say how long ago it was. So I know just enough to make me dangerous. But how could you reconcile that with having some things in D365 and then the other, what was that process like?
So really, if you think about, if it's a three-step process, right, like the PO, requisition and approval, the cutting of the checks, and then the bank reconciliation. So the first two were always in D365 from the beginning. And the bank reconciliation was still being done. It was just being done outside of D365.
So then did you have to do like a manual process to reconcile the two?
They were doing a manual process, yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
They were just a little bit, it took a lot to get them to convert when we went live with D365, so it just happened slower than anticipated because I was there during the process, and just making sure the key employees in the treasurer's office that actually did all the work were in all the meetings, and it didn't happen as much up front, and a lot of it happened, especially when Donna Kurtz came in, making sure the key staff that needed to be involved, and it was a lot more elaborate process that ended up. So, but they were definitely still reconciling. It's just the communication with D365.
Mr. Collins?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you both. I know from speaking to both of you, you're very passionate about this. And the conversation's going to linger for a while because of the passion, and I do appreciate that. I just wanted to back up to something, Carrie, you had said about, you showed a screen where it showed what the budget was and actual, and it flags if they're over budget. Is that based on the budget where it's at in that moment in time? So does it look at, we're halfway through the year, so I'm looking at half the budget, or is it based on the total budget? Does my question make sense?
So it's in real time.
Okay.
As things get posted. So I think sometimes there's a tiny bit of discrepancy with budget analysis because, like I said, the system will look at things in draft, but it doesn't actually hit budget analysis as an expense until it posts from the auditor's office approval.
But if we're halfway through the year and they
Correct.
post something that puts them at 65% of budget.
Yes, correct.
That-
It's real time.
So it's real, it flags it as in that case?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I was just going to mention, we have conversations with departments. They budget in one area and they'll really want to post a transaction to where they have budgeted, but sometimes there's a different main account, and even though they have a budget in one main account bucket, that let's say if it's, they want to post a miscellaneous supplies because they have budget there, and we're like, maybe they don't have budget for computer software, but they're spending on computer software. We're like, let's post in computer software. That way, next year, we can more accurately budget for what you're spending. So we don't want to just put things into buckets because we have these buckets. We want to make sure it's accurate so that we can budget and we are properly recording transactions as they exist as well. And the little differences, I wanted to comment, we mentioned we budget control by object level 1. Well, just to define that further, and on the expense side, she mentioned 30 was payroll, but 40 is spending on contractual, on services of people doing things. And so that category is not something tangible. And then 5s is something more tangible. And so a lot of times we get budget errors. They might have budget in service, but they're out on commodities on that fund within that department. And so they could potentially do a transfer if it makes sense to do a transfer. But the system is really robust. We have a lot of value that we've obtained from it. And so we cannot spend more money than you guys authorize because it will get flagged as it goes through the process. So.
Mr. Kearns?
Thanks for this presentation. Is this the only treasurer's slide you're going over?
Yes.
Okay, so my question, and I might call Donna also when she gets back in town, but my question is on our fund balances for each fund. One of the issues that I believe as a board we always face is encumbered funds. And how do we go about finding how much of each fund balance is encumbered for the projects that they're designated to?
So
And
that's
does,
it.
and there's two parts to that question. The
Okay.
second one is, does that, on the treasurer side, does that determine her investments and length of investments when things are encumbered?
So in the general fund and the financial statements, we have the total fund balance and it's broken out by specific categories. So assigned, unassigned, restricted, and unavailable. And so those encumbrances are gonna show up in assigned which we include with our total, like when I say unrestricted fund balance, we add those two numbers together because I guess we're in a PO with a contract, but we can, based on how most of our contracts are written, we can also get out of them. So we do include that number. And as far as knowing how much to invest, I would say that depends kind of on which fund. I know, like in her work with the Division of Transportation, it's based on their 5-year program. I think it's very planned out about how much money they'll need at which particular time. We've been talking a lot about our strategy for the general fund, and as the reserve gets spent down, I know she's been working on trying to increase the duration on some of our investments, but also being a little more mindful that, you know, as stuff is rolling off, especially as we come into the spring, you know, holding it in cash for a little bit until we get to the June when we get our first installment of property taxes. And then looking at, does that go into the 2 to 5 year duration that is really our goal? Or do we keep that in something shorter, like a 1 year? And a lot of that is based on our budget discussions as well.
So, transportation, when we encumber our funds for transportation, I just want to clarify my own confusion sometimes, which is usually often. But I want to clarify on encumbered projects relating to our 5-year plan. What point do we encumber in that 5-year plan? If something's on the 5th year of that plan, we don't encumber that right away.
They encumber projects as they're approved.
As it's
For the whole,
approved.
so if it's a 5-year project, they will encumber that when it's approved in the first year, and then they carry it over. So if you remember in last month's meeting, there was the PO roll forward. That's part of that process, moving those
Correct.
projects through the years.
Correct. So the entire scope of that project over the 5-year plan is encumbered as if we've approved it in the 5-year plan.
Yes. Once it's approved by the board, not just the 5-year plan, but the actual project.
Okay. And are there any other departments that we do this on other than transportation?
You mean the roll forward?
The encumbering over a 5-year period or so, is it just as the project comes up, we encumber it? Are there any other departments or
Yeah.
funds that we do that for?
There's multiple funds that we do that for. I would say the highway is a little more precise in, you know, these 10 projects, these 10 POs. With like the general fund, I would say it's more a grant type where we do the roll forwards. ARPA the same way. We roll a lot from ARPA and from CDBG, which is a big grant. I would say those are the primary.
Okay, and last question on fund balances. When we're looking at the treasurer's report, the fund balances this month, going
So
from
the
my
treasurer's
memory, it had
report
the end of,
is not fund balance.
treasurer's report is not fund balance.
It's
So when
bank balance.
So when she has on that list, the general fund on the very top line, that is not the actual fund balance.
That's the bank balance as of a point in time.
Okay.
So
And-
think of it like your, like, again, like your checkbook.
So
Like you may
what
show
makes
more
up-
money in the bank, but you know you have these 10 checks that as soon as they're cashed, it's gonna go down.
Right.
So
So
the
what
fund
makes
balance
up that
records it.
fund balance? What makes up the fund balance? How would I know what the fund balance is when I'm looking in the system or whatever? How do I match up where our fund balance actually is for the general fund?
So there's nothing we have in, that's available for the public that shows the fund balance month by month, because there's a lot of things, especially when we do our year-end audit entries, that affect fund balance. So, you know, I say use the treasurer's report like as a monthly, you know, there's ratios, right? Like, so maybe it's not exact, like if the general fund bank balance is at 50 million and our fund reserve or fund balance is at 51 or 52, you know, it's more, they're close, but I guess just making sure you understand the difference. But if you use the treasurer's report, I think that would be a fine tool.
So
As far as high-level analysis.
How do we know what the reserves are in that fund balance? what is considered a reserve?
So in the special revenue funds, the entire balance is the reserve because of the nature of their, everything's restricted to that special use. So, and then the general fund, again, I would say we don't have that much that is unavailable, because that's really the difference, unavailable or restricted.
Which in January, I think it was 2.7 million, you said, was encumbered, that was rolled forward.
So the encumbrances are in that number because we haven't paid them out yet. We're just holding it off to the side. So
Okay.
of that total amount, it's still sitting in the bank, but we know of that total amount, we have POs that we have to pay.
Okay. And this is something, I've been on board a long time, so I should know this, but I don't. You know, and I'll readily admit this, that I don't understand this part of our fund balances and our reserves, how they function properly, how we should relate to that as board members, how we should look at that, knowing, we keep hearing this, we have these big reserves, some people of our board says, we have these great big reserves, we need to spend those down before we pass a levy or whatever, for whatever reason. I just want to understand why I would buy that or why I would not buy that idea. And I got to figure out how to learn that, and maybe it's just a one-on-one with you, but I don't know how our entire board does that other than one-on-ones to explain that.
Well, even an indication of that, even if you just look at the treasurer's report, if you look at the ending balance, even if you look at the beginning balance versus the ending balance on the 11/30 report, you can see the spend down of the reserve. So I think just looking at that, recognizing that they're not going to be exact, but they're going to be, I think for your high level purpose, is going to be close enough to see the spend down of those reserves over the year.
Okay. I think I'll probably
Like, do you
ask.
guys all have the 11/30 treasurer's report? That's the one I like to look at to see,
I think it
beginning
was on the,
balance,
I think she had the
year-to-date
beginning.
inflows and outflows, and then the ending.
I think she had the beginning on her treasurer's report on that. I think it was 11/30 was the beginning. I think, on this month. But anyway, I think I let you get on with the meeting, and I'm gonna request that
Okay,
we have time to sit down,
of course.
because I just gotta get my head around this.
Well, I guess, I mean, when you look at 11/30, let's say that it's at $50 million. But you also have to have the understanding that payroll alone is gonna be, what, about $8 million a month, is that right? I mean, so when we don't get revenues from property taxes until that May due date, I mean, that balance continues to decline until we start getting those tax revenues in.
Yeah, and you'll see that especially in the special revenue funds that rely
5 months
solely
times
on property
8 million,
tax.
you're looking at $40 million. So
Yes.
we do drop down to a certain level at that point until we start getting revenues.
Yes, and I think it's important too, like if you look at the treasurer's report, FICA is not negative, because obviously you can't have a negative bank balance, but their fund balance is negative, and that's because of the transfer of cash between the bank accounts.
That's part of my questions that I want to ask of the general fund, of what is the general fund financing in some of these reserves, FICA or ARPA? What are some of the balances that actually should be part of the general fund, or are they reflected in the general fund still?
So on the treasurer's report, because that's the bank, and we've done the transfer, you're gonna see those balances sitting in the special revenue funds.
Okay.
But in the fund reserve, that's considered an asset on the general fund, so you will see it in the fund balance with the general fund. So is that part of the disconnect?
That's
Okay.
my question, is what, then we can get the true general fund number, right? After you, if you show that as an asset of the general fund,
Yeah, that's
it'll
in
give
the
us that true number.
financials, so we can go through that if you wanna sit down.
I-
It's way at the end of the report, which I think it should be at the beginning, but
Right, okay.
where it breaks it out, and then not only can you see it by each of those categories, the unavailable, restricted, so restricted would be like for a grant, and then assigned and unassigned. You can see that for the general fund, but you can also see the history of it over the past 10 years. So you can see how that fund balance, maybe the total has stayed consistent, but the unassigned is going down, you know, as we lower the reserve.
Okay, I won't take any more of your time, but I would like to sit down and actually you show me how to find that or look
Okay,
at it.
of course.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, moving on to new business. Do any members have items from next Tuesday's agenda they'd like to remove for discussion? Mr. Scala?
10B1, 13D.
Mr. Smith?
Oh, 13K, please.
13 what?
K.
Mr. Hendricks?
16B, 61.
Mr. Kearns?
13F and I had a 16, is this the same one that you pulled the, I'm sorry, on the ordinance review, 17A, the purchases for review, I'd like us to discuss the changes in that.
17A1 or 2?
I think that's A1.
Okay, Mr. Scala, 10B1?
Yes, hi, I was going to talk about this zoning request. There is a lot of good information on pages 9 through 19, which is the zoning board comments regarding why they voted either yes or no. So I would highly recommend reading those. I have not witnessed a petition that has 10 pages of comments from 7 members. That just goes to show the level of detail that each of the zoning board members put into whether they voted yes or no. You know, basically what it comes down to, the standards for the approval of the conditional use were not satisfied. And I couldn't disagree more with Mr. Aldridge and his comments. I think they were, I don't know how to put it politely, they were just really out of context. But I felt like the other 6 did a really good job of pointing out all the reasons why this petition should be voted down. I don't need to go into all the detail. I don't feel that it's worth the time to do that when it was so well laid out by them. But I would strongly encourage a no vote for this petition.
Okay. 13A, Mr. Smith?
Uh, 13K.
Oh, okay, I thought you said A.
I'm sorry.
My apologies. 13K.
Yeah, this is the resolution to transfer the jurisdiction of Fleming Road. And I guess I just need some more information. It's my understanding that the Village of Bull Valley did not want the county to change the nature, the real nature of that road. So I don't understand why we're giving them $4 million to maintain it while we're giving them the road jurisdiction. Could there be some details on that, please?
Mr. Kopowski?
Thank you.
Member Smith, this is something that you referenced the history of it when we did Fleming Road and the project that was done at that place at that time called the Place Recycling. We are now at that stage that something needs to be done on Fleming Road now. And so this dollar amount that was negotiated was to jurisdictionally transfer this, is that we knew that improvement had to be done, so dollars were included in the jurisdictional transfer.
So the $4 million was the estimated calculation for the repairs of the road, so that when we turn over the jurisdiction, it is going to be in satisfactory condition.
The road will be turned over in its condition as it is today. It will be up to the Village of Bull Valley to repair it as they see needed.
So is there anything, and I'm not a lawyer, didn't read the contract, is there anything that says this $4 million in RTA funds will be used specifically for that road?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Scala, 13D.
Oh, I was just gonna, well, I can go to that in a second, but I was just gonna comment to Larry's
Oh, go ahead.
question on that. You know, this was discussed in transportation, and I don't know if you're aware, but when this was redone, I guess is the best way to put it, back many years ago, that was a very controversial thing for the county board and the residents. And so I think myself, being on transportation, I feel this is the best way to deal with the resurfacing and redesign of that road, because based on how it was done back then, it wasn't necessarily done in the best interest of keeping that road for long-term use without having to put a bunch more money into it. And so, quite honestly, I'm more than happy to give them $4 million and get rid of the fight that they have with the residents there about what that road should look like. So I think this is a blessing, to be honest with you.
I mean, wasn't it that we wanted to bring that road up to current county standards at one time, and that was not very popular? Is that right?
That is correct. When we went through it, as Member Scala is referencing, when we were going through that to bring it up to appropriate standards, was not something that the board supported at that time.
Ms. Campbell?
Just a quick, so the $4 million would take it up to the standards that we had. So what, can you remind me what it costs to resurface, what we have been doing to kind of maintain that road, and how often we do that?
We have done nothing with that road except for patching that goes out there by our maintenance section. It's due for it as we evaluate our plan every year on what roads are going to be done. And then it's a priority. So that depends on what year it's gonna be done, but nothing has been done between when the project was done to this point in time.
And when was, okay, all right, thank you.
Ms. Van Hoff?
So, yes, I guess this.
Can you pull your mic to yourself, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I guess this would be a question. I'm looking at her. Is this a good example of funds that would have been encumbered for that project? I guess what I'm asking is the $4 million, is this something that is outside of our budget?
No, this is in the RTA fund, correct? And they budgeted for this.
Okay, all right.
Yes, it was included in the 5-year program and it was also included in the budget.
Okay, so this is nothing new. We already knew about this. This was a part of a project that was approved.
Anytime you expend any dollars, resolution needs to come forward to you for consideration.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, seeing no further comments on that item, Mr. Scala, 13D.
Yeah, so I will apologize. You know, Finance Committee met, but we did not have a quorum. That's why all of these resolutions are sitting on new and unfinished business. So I apologize for the board having to deal with all this on new and unfinished. This resolution was something that did go through Member Altoff's committee and had some lengthy discussion. I had anticipated having lengthy discussion at finance, was not able to do that. I wanted to give those members that were not on Senator Altoff's, or not Senator, former Senator Altoff's committee, whatever you are, that lady down there, Pam. Sorry. A chance to understand why we are in the situation that we're in currently with all of this. If you look at the resolution, we are pulling approximately $3.2 million from fund balance in order to pay for all of these expenses. And as we've had discussions in the past, you know, we keep on utilizing the general fund to pay for, in this particular case, reoccurring expenses, which will cause issues with future budgets. And so I wanted Carrie to have an opportunity to kind of talk about a little bit about how we got here, what we're doing to correct it going forward, what software we are utilizing or going to be utilizing in order to correct this, and then also the Sheriff's Department or Transportation or any of the other departments who are listed on here, an opportunity to kind of talk about process in place for their particular budgets and personnel to get where we are today.
Before we get to Carrie, Ms. Altoff, did you want to?
No, I just wanted to note that in committee, just to make it clear, in committee, this resolution passed after some discussion, but with the understanding, exactly as Mr. Scala just stated, Chair Scala just stated, that the individuals, departments that were affected by this resolution would be here today, in addition to Carrie. They are. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Carrie?
So I'm just trying to think where to start. I guess first off, how we got here. You know, we've had within the budget policy a pretty specific way that we budget for personnel since I've been here. And I think as we, you know, went through the pandemic, came out of the pandemic, we have to re-examine some of the assumptions we're making with our personnel budget. You know, something similar like this happened last year. It happened in 25. You know, and depending on how many vacancies we realize in 26 will probably happen again in 26. And so I think in a way it's reacting to the work that's been done to reduce the vacancy list. So having less positions, you know, and then, as I said, coming out of COVID, being more competitive after some compensation studies, we've realized less vacancies. So I think, you know, the sheriff, I want to thank him and Sandy. We met for a long time to try to dig into exactly what happened. You know, was it planning? Was it some things operationally? What's in their control? What's not? And I think we had a really good discussion. It kind of gave me some good ideas about budgeting differently going forward. And then second is how I'm communicating to the full board, not just finance and audit, as we go throughout the year. You know, because really it was probably about August in my presentation where I knew that we were going to have some budget issues within the Sheriff's Department, a couple others. You know, but maybe making that a little more clear to this board. So I think you want some of the specifics with the sheriff, what we came up with, and then he can talk about them in detail. We had in November of 24, the same night that we approved the budget, there was also approval of 2 contracts, FOP Unit 1 and Unit 2. And so we had a placeholder for how much these contracts would cost us. And so in our typical way of budgeting, we start in probably June or July and we look at the approved roster, as I talked about earlier, and we load that into our budgeting system. And we say, okay, here's the approved position, the approved rate, in the union case, the step movements and how those are moving. And then we come up, it's pretty precise, which I think is a really good thing because it helps when we're going back and looking at variances. But when you're talking about a full year of 1,200 employees, including benefits, there's so much movement. Usually it's, if someone takes one type of insurance, someone else doesn't take any insurance, it kind of balances out. But when we have this precise budgeting and then certain things don't work out like that, then we end up with these variances. So we take the personnel, we load it, we look at what's addition to their base, including benefits. And I think in the case of the sheriff, what is added to the base isn't really changing that much year over year. I think in prior years, some of that was helped in the budget by the vacancies. And so this past year, there was somewhat status quo with this market adjustment added on. So then any addition also has this market adjustment, and then less vacancies. So I have challenged the sheriff, to look at all parts of his operation, which he's already doing. But, and then we're bringing the budget policy next month, really looking at how we're budgeting for vacancies. Because I think that continues to be our issue, maybe opportunity, because I think in the past, the vacancies were maybe masking a little bit some operational improvements that, we could make with really no change to services. So is there a specific question?
Just to be clear though, this is not just Sheriff's Department. There's other departments involved with.
So in the general fund, the majority, we look at percent, right away it's like, well, what is their percent over their budget? And the sheriff is a large department, so it comes out to a large dollar value. But as far as percent variance, it was not the highest. So again, it was a combination of things. We budgeted 1.9 for this market adjustment when these contracts were approved. That's probably closer to about 2.5, so there's a variance there. There was a variance with the non-union command staff. There was a resolution that they also move when the union contracts move. And then, of course, the vacancy hold back. So when you have no vacancies, or lower than we projected, that's about $1 million that we hold back. So that creates a variance as well.
Well, and I think that the important part of what you're saying is that as a county, we have adjusted salaries to be in line with outside of the county, and therefore some market adjustments have happened. And because of that, we are happily finding more full employment in each of the departments than what we have had in the past. And so when we have the holdback, which is in anticipation that not every department will have every position filled for every day of the fiscal year, that has become under pressure because we've had people in every position for every day of the year. And so in the past, that has been our cushion, that has been the flexibility that the county has had, maybe to a detriment of the department because they can't fill all the positions that they need, but that has covered up the large amount of the dollars that we are seeing now. And because of all the market adjustments we've done, and I will say we're paying the employees fairly now versus under rate, that now becomes a real issue because now we don't have that buffer anymore in order to suck those dollars up at the end of the year. And so, we haven't seen a dollar amount that's been this high before because of that. And it's not bad thing. It's not bad to necessarily have full employment in each of the departments, but it also creates a budgetary issue when it's not budgeted for, which it hasn't really been budgeted for. The holdback was kind of how we dealt with that, but as that's been challenged by the county board about how much is held back and what we're looking at as far as each of the department staffing levels, that becomes the challenge.
Correct. The exact process that we do, like I said, we're pretty precise with our payroll budgeting, is in the general fund, we calculate what that will be based on the department, and then we typically would hold back only half of that. And then over the past several years, like you said, that number has been challenged, which, you know, it's a large number just sitting. It sits in non-departmental because then that way, that's the department that reports directly to finance and audit. So there's a certain level of control in doing it this way. It's just, you know, when it misses, because it misses the other way as well, where it's just sitting there and we never use it, you know, like when we were in COVID. So then it's like, well, why do we budget so much for that? So I think it's just really rethinking how we budget for that number to be realistic, you know, as you said, as we're fully staffed, which is good for operations. It creates opportunities for other things.
Yeah, but when it was on the positive side, it just went back to our reserves.
Correct.
So no harm, no foul, right?
Right,
So,
but I don't like to have inflated budgets.
no, and I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that, you know, the board hasn't had to look at it that way, because if it was positive, it just went back to fund reserves. And then, you know, you have board members that will look at fund reserves from our statements and say, well, how come our fund reserve was X last year and it went up? How did it go up so much? Well, part of that is this reason. And so we've never had to deal with this in such a negative manner. Again, not necessarily a bad problem, but it's a problem in the sense that it's not budgeted. And because our budgets are getting squeezed so badly in regard to funds, it becomes a problem, because the general fund, which, you know, we've had board members expressing how high that is now absorbing all this. And, you know, when we look at projecting towards the end of the year, you know, that fund balance will be very close to back to where 5 months, which is where we as a board collectively, if it falls below 5 months, are supposed to be taking action to how to get it back to 5 months. And again, this doesn't address the two funds that are underwater. And, you know, Carrie was polite enough to tell me this morning that one of them is out of money already. So,
yes,
you want
addressing some of the other funds on the resolution. So if you recall, FICA and IMRF, those are the pension and the FICA for the general fund employees. So the special revenue funds pay their own. So typically, if the general fund is over budget in the salaries, then FICA and IMRF are going to be over budget. So budget is one thing, but secondly, IMRF just made its January payment for its liability. So now that fund is essentially zero. I think there'll probably be about 15,000 left in that fund until June. So, you know, during the budget process, we talked a lot about the funds that property tax. It's essential that as the general fund gets closer to 5, that those funds are at 6 months so they can make their own payroll liabilities. Because in the past, you know, FICA right now, you know, relies on the general fund reserve because that fund is not strong enough. And so we knew IMRF was going to run out of money before June. And actually, I thought maybe it would be out of money in January, but we made it till February, so.
Hip, hip, hooray.
That must mean we've ended the year with at least 2 months of reserves.
That's great.
And then addressing the other funds on the resolution, so Valley High, that variance, you know, we talked a lot, I think in August, I can't remember which August, 2 Augusts ago, about the memory care staffing. And so, again, it was finding the good place as they were ramping up. You know, how do we budget for that exactly? And we talked about that there would be adjustments for that, and that's what the Valley High is. And then Division of Transportation, you know, again, I think as we get into the budget, I think it's important to recognize the special revenue funds pay the benefits, health insurance, FICA, and IMRF. And we, again, back to being very precise in our budgeting, we budgeted for 3 employees, and I think we budgeted single coverage. They ended up with family coverage. So, you know, it seems so small and insignificant, but that's about $100,000 of that variance, you know. And then there was a resolution in 2023 that as the engineers moved through grades, they would get increases. So that's more of that variance. So it seems relatively small, but then when you look at how it impacts, you know, the highway fund, you know, and then you see it in resolutions like this, it's like, okay, we have to really think about all that stuff as we get more precise and tighter with these funds.
So can you simply address for the IMRF and FICA component of it, that's not getting those funds healthy, that's just simply covering the shortfall?
So you need 2 things to pay bills, right? You need money in the bank and you need budget. And so really this is just giving budget to IMRF. It's not addressing the bank side of it at all. It's actually, it's going to make the projected reserve slightly worse.
No, I know, but it's in relation to these specific funds, when we were talking about last budget cycle about the loan that's outstanding and perhaps forgiving the loan and perhaps making these funds back healthy again, using fund reserves to make them back healthy without doing a levy shift, which is the other way you can address it. You know, I want to be clear that this doesn't address those things.
Correct, it does not address it. So in the 2026 levy, we took the amount of the levy for FICA and IMRF based on their 2026 projected expenses. So I guess, you know, if everything happens as we planned, we'll have exactly enough money from the property taxes to cover the 2026 expenses only. It does nothing to address anything that is owed.
Or the inherent budget issues.
Correct.
Right. I just want to be very clear with the board. That's, you know, that's another segment that we still got to deal with. That's all I have.
Mr. Collins?
Yeah. So picking up on what Mike said, I think what's important is that, you know, in your presentation, you talked about flagging over budget. And I think it's important, and I do remember you mentioning that, you know, the Sheriff's Department was gonna go over budget in salaries and wages. But I think it's important that we get some type of a tool that looks at budgeted and spent. I'm not worried, I mean, I am worried about revenue, but that number kind of bounces all over the place depending on when grants come in and sales tax comes in, et cetera, et cetera. But something looking at, here's what the budget is, you know, here's what we spent year to date, that jumps out at us very quickly that says, you know, this is a problem. And so that we're looking at that and asking questions much earlier in the process than later in the process. Because once it's spent, it's spent.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do at that point.
And that is, and Scott actually asked me how it went into D365 without a budget error. And I said there was a budget error. But again, it's how do we can't, after the money's spent, after the fact, we have to get it recorded in the system and then address it with the board. I think my first takeaway is different communication to you guys throughout the year. And we're looking at a tool that gives a better dashboard of that. And then second is, as I said, when we were talking about the budget policy next year or next month, You know, historically, finance has been in charge of calculating the personnel budget for departments, which I think is important because we really go, as I said, based off of the board-approved roster. But I think there's been a little bit of disconnect in maybe some of the departments. You know, not all variances are only from budget, right? It could be a combination, it could be actual. So, I mean, even something with the Division of Transportation, you know, my approach, I think, to personnel this cycle will be different because I don't know that they have engineers that are going to school or however they're gonna move up through that resolution. You know, that's something that, you know, if it wasn't just finances, personnel, and then we go with it, you know, having more discussions like that. And then, you know, throughout the year saying to them, well, you know, we're halfway through the year, why use 60% through your personnel budget? Starting those discussions earlier and then sharing that with you guys, I think would do a lot, especially as we're in the middle of talking about 27 budget.
Will moving to ADP help with any of this process?
It will help with a lot of the I think specifically what it will help with is giving the departments better tools to manage their actual, because it's challenging right now. And I think we really discovered that when I was working with the sheriff, you know. But it also was very helpful as we're kicking off these implementation meetings of knowing what they need and what they don't have, you know, when we're talking about building ADP.
Thank you.
Mr. Hartman?
Yeah, and thank you so much for the questions. I just want to commend Board Member Scala on how he articulated how we've operated in the past and then how that led to the situation that we're in this morning. And it's very clear that a lot of the assumptions that we used to employ over the past really we have to rethink. And I think as we go into the 2027 budget, we're going to have to rethink how we look at personnel budgeting, how we engage with the departments earlier on understanding kind of what their needs and what they're seeing forward. So, because if there are going to be shifts or vacancies or lack thereof, we can better anticipate that. But Member Collins brings up a really good point too about what other tools can the county board have. And one thing that Carrie and I talked about is really getting to more of a quarterly financial reporting. This has been, over the years, this has been brought up and we've had different renditions going to finance and audit, but really something that is going to give you something more precise on a quarterly basis so we can see where areas of budgets are trending higher or lower. And there may be stories to each of those, but nonetheless, that way we could see it. And as we see situations like that, especially with payroll and personnel, which tend to be a little bit more predictable, then we'll be able to have those conversations a lot earlier to better understand what's happening, and we can position the county and the county board for what we may need to do as far as adjustments at the year end. So that's one of the things that moving forward, we're going to change. We're going to give you that information earlier. We're going to develop how that's going to look. But I think even as we go into the budget process, we're going to talk about how we're going to look at some of the assumptions that we used to employ, how those change and how we need to approach it. Because as you know, there is going to be a lot of work to do as we develop this 2027 budget. It's going to be different than any other budget that you've had to deal with in the past. We're up for the challenge. In fact, we're looking forward, but I think it's implementing some of the tools, and even through this, going through this and understanding what happened, some of, I'm going to say lessons learned. As Member Collins asked the question about our payroll system, you know, it leaves a lot of things to be desired. There aren't the tools in there that we could have used to help address this. ADP, we believe, is going to add to that. Once we get ADP up and running, we're going to be in a much better position because we'll be able to account for different areas, different operational areas, and be able to see that as opposed to what our current system can do, and it blends everything together. It makes it a little challenging. So we focus a lot on how do we move forward from this? What do we learn and what do we do differently? And I think the intent is to get out of kind of the situation. I think it should be celebrated that we have low vacancies at the county because a lot of the efforts that the county has done over the years, the strategic plan goals to promote recruitment and retention, they worked. They worked really, really well. And this is one of the unintended consequences of the work, is now we have to figure out how to bring the back end of it, bring the cost into the equation now, knowing that we have a good place to work here, we have people who are staying, and now we have to adjust the budget to take that into consideration.
Aren't there external forces that we don't have control over at times? I mean, maybe that it would be impossible to budget for. I mean, let's say maybe a public emergency or requirements of unfunded mandates that you can't really foresee in advance that there might be putting pressure on some of these areas.
Yeah, very much so. Things that require staffing, whether we budgeted for it or not, you have to have staffing available. I think Sheriff Tatumman can really speak well to what he has to do with regards to just prolonged investigations, what he has to do to provide for the Safety Act and the pretrial fairness, things that we do not know year to year going into it, but we have to do. We have to pay personnel to do, and that's not something we can just say no, or if we hit budget, say, we're going to stop, we can't do it anymore. Chairman is absolutely correct. These unfunded mandates, once again, we have no control about it. We have to do it, and that impacts certain departments over others.
Not just the sheriff's department.
Not just the sheriff. You know, I'll bring up, you know, we have through the state's attorney, through public defender, through the courts, there's a lot of things that the Pretrial Fairness Act does impact us on, and that we don't have control. You know, another example we'll use, and for DOT, fortunately, knock on wood, I don't want to jinx you, but we've had some mild winters. But if you get a really snowy winter, you know, his crews need to be out there plowing the streets and incur the overtime. We have to do that, and we may or may not have budgeted for it, but that's really where it comes into. It's like we try to predict what the year is going to hold when we adopt the budget, and then at the end of the year, we know exactly what happened and we know what the budget came in. So it's always that, you know, marrying those two. So but I appreciate bringing up that point.
The importance of building that buffer in case we have always unexpected expenses.
You know, we talk about our financial strength, and our financial strength has been built on having that cushion. When we lose that cushion, we're gonna run into this predicament, and it's gonna be harder and harder to address. So that's why it's so important when we think of budgeting, we always have to maintain that cushion because that is our fiscal strength.
Mr. Kearns?
Okay, I've really kind of pulled my hair out trying to grasp this whole situation that we're in, and looking at the past. I mean, we have to just assume that we're going to move forward and we have to fix this situation, that it doesn't happen again. And yet we need to provide the services and provide the funds to the departments for those services. Payroll is, of course, what percentage of our cost? Is it in the 80% range, you know, of our total cost of the county is payroll and compensation, around that? Yeah, and for the general fund? Okay, and so I guess what I'm trying to get at is in the future, we say we're fixing these things. One question that comes to my mind off the bat is what ifs. What if we move to ADP here and that doesn't provide what we're looking for? And we don't know until June till you get it up. We're halfway through the year.
One quick response to that is part of the takeaway from our current software is we know what questions to ask right out of the gate. And so we went through extensive demos and we sat down with the technical people saying, here's our problem, you show us the solution to fix it. So I feel pretty good. I mean, of course, there's no software system that is absolutely perfect, but I think we have a good solution that's going to address a lot of our biggest issues that we have right now.
Okay.
That's part of our learning from the system we're in.
And is there any kind of backup that our department heads, sheriff, transportation, Valley High, the big ones in this one right now, because it's not just them, it's every department this would affect. And you've explained a lot of the reasons why this happened, right? But is there anything that they can do to help report that, to give us a better idea? I mean, did they know, or do they know this is going to happen, that they're not going to have enough money in their budget? I guess is my question. Do they know that? Or are they relying on their payroll system, where they're relying on Cronus for that? I mean, the Sheriff's Department has a very complicated pay system, I believe, or compensation through the contracts that we have to honor. Can't change it. I mean, we signed it, and I don't believe you'll probably ever go any lower than that. But I tried to read through those contracts a little bit, and I thought, holy cow, how do you keep track of their compensation for these guys? Because you've got sick days, you got compensation, you got the different tier levels in each pay period, and as anniversary date reaches, they move up, and 3% turns into 8%, right? And so I'll get on to my concern here. Is the sheriff's budget last year for personnel side was 32.6 million?
Yes.
Okay, and we missed it by 3.5 million, I'm rounding numbers off, approximately, because we provided for that budget, right? And part of that, I'm saying, is we're victims of our own design by cutting 16 or 18 positions, not just in the sheriff's department, but that affected our holdback that you guys are talking about for a reserve. And therefore we don't have, when this happened, we don't have the reserves to do that. Our fund is being sucked dry. Now, so the budget for last year, for 25, was 32.6. This year's budget was increased for the sheriff's department to 35.9? Or what was it increased to? It was like 2.9 they got an increase for?
It was about 7%.
7%? And we had a full staff pretty much, or not pretty much, but you had less vacancies in 25. I guess my concern here is we haven't budgeted enough because of not knowing this is going to hit us. We haven't budgeted enough in our 26 budget. And just doing a pencil scratch here, that we're going to come up $1 million short this year again without having more vacancies, without, because we don't have the holdback, so we're gonna come up short on our funds and our budget this year. So were we sitting here next January doing the same thing?
Depends on the amount of vacancies.
Right, and vacancies is about the only way we can control that, because our contracts have increases. We have people going to move up the tier level, so that cost is going to increase. I don't know if all that's incorporated in here, because we didn't understand it for this year. Did we understand it at the time for 26 budget? Did we understand and build that into the budget that we currently are on? Or is that not included in the budget? And when I say that, I talk about this there. Yeah, we're gonna have some high-paid people retire, higher paid levels. Gonna retire, we're gonna replace them. But then we always have that every year. So it kind of offsets itself. We always have higher people retire. We replace them with lower paid people, and then they all move up the ranks. So that of retirement doesn't satisfy me whether or not we have enough money. It's only through that I see possibility that we have higher vacancy, and I don't know if we want that. So tell me how we satisfy ourselves on this budget, and what else can we do differently for next year's budget that we're coming up with? And in your budget policy, is there a better way for us to incorporate that into our budget policy so that we don't have to cut services?
So first addressing 25 versus 26. So as I said, when we calculate the personnel budget, we start with a report straight out of payroll, and we say, here's the position, the rate, authorized hours, and so on. And that again is based on the board-approved roster. So we load it into our budget software, and it's actually very precise. We can say, you know, this deputy, based on their union contract, on their anniversary date, will move from this rate to this rate. And it calculates it to the hour. So we did that for 26 because we obviously had all the market adjustment amounts already in the payroll system. The challenge with 25 is we did the normal process over the summer with where they were at, their hours and all that. And then at the very end of the process, actually on the same night the budget was approved, we said, okay, here's what we know, and here's the approved contract, and we just added a lump sum to that number. So the difference between adding the lump sum based on the contracts that were approved the same night versus what the budget would have been if we had run it through, the very granular detail, is probably about half of this budget variance. So I would say in 26 that's been addressed, just based on the starting point. The holdback is going to be the issue, which, interesting on your calculation, the holdback is just over $1 million. So again, it's one of those things where we look to see, like, at the end of the year, if they're over budget by $1 million, again, there's so many different variables, but we could probably say in total, we thought there would be this much vacancy and we didn't realize that. So there's the variance. But again, we have to kind of look and see how the year works out with vacancies. And then on top of that, how we're going to address vacancies differently as we start talking about the 27 budget.
Right, and that would be through
the budget policy.
The budget policy, okay. All right, and something Sheriff Tadelman, my concern, I don't understand it, that, like November 15th, whatever, we were almost at budget on payroll, and of course then you got 2 weeks worth of payroll. Can you explain a little bit how this comp time works for people who aren't union and don't understand this comp time, how much they have to take? Some of it expires if they don't take payment on it, or how does that work?
So I know a lot of this, you guys hear me? I talk a lot.
Yep.
A lot of this revolved around comp time when it came to us, and then Carrie had let us know that we were over by a large amount, and it at first glance seemed to be comp time was the issue to it. So I'll talk about comp time. We have two different contracts that individuals really revolve around: comp time control and corrections unit 1 and unit 2. By contract, individuals are allowed to carry a certain balance of comp time. I know in unit 1 it's 220 hours of comp time. So the way you can get comp is if all the holidays, every employee is entitled to 8 hours of holiday pay. They can take it as pay or take it as comp. So every day that is approved from you guys as a holiday, those 8 hours can transition right over to comp time. Anytime they take overtime, it can be converted from time and a half to straight time and go to comp time. Those are ways that individuals can collect comp time throughout the year. So there are two numbers that each contract has: is the amount that they can carry during the year, and then the amount that they have to go down to at the end of the fiscal year. So let's say I'm carrying 200 hours of comp time. Contract says that I only can carry 180 hours over the course, into the next year. So I have to cash in 20 hours of comp time. So that's how comp time works. What I will say is through this process, when we were sitting down with Carrie, as there was a concern that there was a huge increase in the comp time that was being allocated to our deputies and actually our staff as a whole. We went back to 2018. The amount of comp time has been pretty consistent over the past 7 years. The issue that we run into is the market adjustment that we had. It was, I don't want to say unaccounted for, but, maybe short calculated.
I'm going to move over. This view is so much nicer. So the dollar amount that we ran into, now I'm really loud. The dollar amount that we ran into on the shortage that we believe to be about $500,000 in the comp time was allocated to the market adjustment that wasn't basically utilized in the budget. One of the things that, unbeknownst to us, that we have now fixed, or we're going to fix, we don't have a line for comp in our budget. When comp payout was historically made, it was just taken out of the personnel line, knowing that we weren't fully staffed. So because we're fully staffed, we're actually getting penalized because there's no other way to draw that money out of, no other line to draw that out of. So I know that's one of the things that we're working on to get a better understanding, because one thing I don't know if you guys know about me, Sandy sends me a report and I do a percentage of every single line in our budget to make sure that we're in line with the month that we're at, probably to a fault. But what I will say is things that we don't know, we don't know. So you ask, how do we get in November, mid-November? Because we didn't know, right? We didn't see those lines. And I think that was, there was some, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's some of the downfall of Kronos and the reporting that we can see, and some other things that we're tweaking to be a little bit more transparent, that we're on the same page with them, because I didn't know either. And you can only imagine where I felt when I got a phone call that we were, as much as we were over budget, and I knew there was just no way that we were over budget on something that I could control.
I really appreciate that explanation, because that's the thing I've been struggling with is, how did we get there?
Sure.
And I appreciate that, and I appreciate the acknowledgement of, we just don't know. I do appreciate that, because we all are, some things are beyond our knowledge. If it's not there, it's not there in the planning. So I guess under this, I have to, as a board member, trust that we're gonna fix this in our financial side and our accounting side that compensates what we are compensating, but it protects our balances because we're budgeting for it in the future. Because, if we look at our contracts that we've signed, 3-4%, and then they give increases, and some of these contracts jump up to 8% basically by the time we're all done. And that's a big part of big portion of our expenses of our levy, our tax levy. Okay, when the CPI is 2.9% and you've got 80% of your cost that's growing at 5 to 8%, where do we go from here in our budgets in the future? I guess that's the thing I'm afraid of, and maybe I don't understand it right, but that is my concern of how we address that we need to address that in our future budgets, and us as board members have to appropriate. And I have to say, in the past, some of my votes on the levy, I'm ashamed of them. I'm ashamed of some of those votes that I did, because I did not understand. This year I was on a totally different level of understanding of where we're going to because of the inflation and everything else. These costs aren't going away. The cost of the police cars, the radios, and everything else in our budgets isn't going down. Our transportation, Valley High, those costs aren't going down. They're only going to go up. And so our future planning, I'm glad you brought up the budget policy that covers some of those things better in that. Thank you.
Mr. Collins?
Thank you, Chair. A couple quick questions. One, comp time is paid out at their current rate, not at the rate it was earned at, correct?
Yes and no. I mean, you can cash it out, so I mean, that's hard to.
Well, I can carry over so many year to
Well, but
year.
but if I'm an individual who has 10 hours of comp time and I earned it and I cash it out, that's at the current rate. You know what I'm saying? So think of it like on a balance. And I guess if we want to think of a perfect world, the oldest comp time would be used to cover at the current rate. So, I mean, there is an opportunity where an individual who carries it over to that next year, then all that comp time is at that rate of that next year. So there is an inflationary contribution to the value of that comp time.
Okay, and then, so then how do we account for that in the budget process? So when we're looking at comp time that's been carried over, and we know now it's not worth $20 an hour anymore, I'm just using a number, it's now worth $25 an hour, do we understand that in the budget process?
So I think this is one of the opportunities we talked about. So right now, we do account for vacation and comp as a liability during the audit process, but that's not something that we really consider during the full budget process as an expense. Because like I said, it's just a liability until they choose to take it. So again, it's one of those, you know, how much do you budget for it? You know, you don't want to budget for the full balance because that's not going to happen. But you know, as all the departments are more fully staffed, maybe taking a percent and seeing, you know, based on past usage or whatever. So it is something, and then as the sheriff mentioned, how we track it. Because right now, when it hits the payroll line, it just comes out of regular pay, whether it's comp, regular comp, or comp OT. So again, it creates multiple challenges for reporting, budgeting, and planning everything, so.
Okay, thank you,
Okay, any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 13F, Mr. Kearns.
Look at what 13F was. That was the movement up of fees? Okay. My only question on that is I love that you actually, because budget, you gotta cover some of these costs on these fees and everything. And I listened to your long government meeting, and sometimes you stated, and I know some of this is statute probably, and that's maybe the answer is gonna be to me here, but I want to clarify. On the fees, like for evictions and serving warrants and different things, sometimes we send 3 officers out, but we charge for 1. We can only charge for 1 by statute. Is that how that goes?
Yeah, I think they used an average when they did that. So Bellwether looked at how we did, what statute says we're allowed to charge for, what our operations are. The problem is with that is, you know, sometimes when we send more than 1 deputy to an eviction, it's usually we get a warning about something. And then more often than not, that second deputy is gone within 15 or 20 minutes. So, I mean, by statute, it says, you know, that we are allowed to charge for a deputy to be there. But I think Bellwether looked at our common practices and went along with, you know, practices with statute and developed their budget accordingly.
Okay, and so we increased the fees, and I'm not looking at it, but I know one went from $46 or something to $104, whatever. And we hadn't changed them since 2004 or 6 and that. We have to run a bellwether study to change the fees?
Yeah, so actually how this came about was we had received information from the Public Defender's Office on the fees that were being charged that weren't in line with the statute. So what we did was we actually had to bring in a vendor to do the audit. So that's how we got to Bellwether.
Okay.
So Bellwether was the one that had won the bid, or not bid, or was the preferred bid. I don't remember what that part was quoted. Okay, so that's how we got to Bellwether, so that they could do the study that was brought in front of you, brought in front of you guys, which allows us to now charge whatever that study fee was. Because actually we had to go back, because the last time we had done it, like you had mentioned, I believe it was 2004. That study was so old, we actually had to go back to what the statute says as far as fees are, and that's even less than what the old study was. So we're in like this limbo zone where we only can actually charge what the statute says we can charge. That's why we brought up an updated study to show that we can do these fees.
So that's limits the dollar amount that we're gonna go up to. It's limited by statute. Okay,
no,
so
the
we can't charge more.
No, if without a study, we couldn't charge more. If that makes sense. Because of the study, we can charge what the study says we can charge.
What the study says. So we
Correct.
couldn't charge $200, we have to charge the 110.
That,
Okay.
well, and I
That
imagine
was-
we probably could charge more, but it probably would be contested in court. Because, that's why we have that study to show what the costs are and all that to align with what we're charging.
Because I also got out of that in your committee meeting on law and government, one of the comments is they don't necessarily have to use, for warrants, they don't have to use our department, but apparently it's probably easier for them to do it, walk out of court and walk over to you or something.
That's correct.
Probably.
Yes, sir.
And so that's what led to my questions of, I guess, who cares if they use us, if we're losing money on it? But by statute, I guess another one of the things why we lose money on things. So that's all I had for that. I just wanted to, my point of the whole thing was, could we raise the fees higher than what we're actually doing? And the answer is no. Thank you.
Ms. Campbell?
Yes, so getting to the bellwether, you needed to have that done in order to review the fees. Well, all that's been covered, so I'm not gonna talk about that. But how long is that study good for? I mean, I know we talked at some point, if remembering, maybe law and government, but anyway, that they kind of had other things out there that we're not currently doing, but they don't necessarily make sense for our department, but I don't know. So my question is, how long is this study good for to actually move on a recommendation that maybe we're not doing today?
Yeah, I think that was based on statute change. So the statutes changed from the time we had a study.
Right.
And then we didn't have a new study from the new statute. So my understanding is as long as the statute doesn't change, that study will be good.
Oh, okay. So.
I mean, they can change it tomorrow and then we'll have to go over and do it.
Right, but, okay. All right, sounds good, thank you.
Okay, next item, 16B61, Mr. Hendricks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just two quick questions. One, why was 16BE61 not on the agenda for finance? I know there was no finance agenda, but it does involve dollar amounts, so I was just wondering why it would be only considered in transportation versus the finance committee as well. And maybe that's Scott, or I don't know who answers that, but
I can answer that. That's underneath the thresholds that we established for what needs to go to Finance Committee.
Okay, thank you. And then the second question is, the consultant chosen was stated to be the preferred bidder. Is that more or less the same thing as the lowest responsible bidder? Normally, when I look at those requests for bids, there'll be like an attachment of, here's everyone else that bid. That wasn't included in this, so that was just the question I had.
So this is a qualifications-based selection. It's not a bid. So we put out a request for qualifications. I think we got 13 firms, is that right, for this? This is the one through the ranking that was the highest. When we do that, that's the firm that we negotiate with then.
Okay, understood.
Okay, Mr. Kearns, 17A1.
I would just like a little bit of review on the red line of what changes were kind of out of the ordinary. In other words, right now we have the 30,000 limit, that's not changed. What are some of the changes or reasons for some of these changes?
I'm going to start this and then we'll turn it over to Adam to talk about the specifics. But as part of the transition of county administration from the previous county administrator, Pete Austin, to myself, a lot of changes have been implemented. One of the changes that is part of this transition is to change the role of purchasing and basically change Adam's position from purchasing or director of procurement and special services to create the assistant county administrator position and put other duties onto his role. And then purchasing will then fall to, under Carrie, under the financial department. So that's the key driver of this change, is really to implement that transition of purchasing from Adam basically into finance. And years ago, that's where purchasing used to live. The purchasing director reported to what was then, well, now the CFO. That was broken off. Really, it's just getting back to how it used to be. So it's kind of what's really driving this, but while that opportunity comes up, there's opportunity to make other changes and tweaks that we had seen over the years that would also address some operational issues. So that's the main driver. Adam, I'll turn it over to you to fill in the blanks.
Thank you. Scott stole a lot of my thunder.
He did, because he answered a lot of my questions.
Yeah, fair enough. No, I say it's most of the red line is due to removal of the Office of Director of Procurement and Special Services, and it's changing it to a purchasing division under the supervision of the Chief Financial Officer. So anywhere that office was mentioned, it needs to be split between the purchasing division, is what it says now, or the Chief Financial Officer, depending on what the responsibility is in there. Aside from that, we just did some clarifying on some market competitive procurements that have come into question over the years since we've had that. We've also consolidated some of the information and reasons where and how we or the bidder may be able to cancel or withdraw a bid or an RFP or an RFQ, as the case may be. Then there is some really grammatical cleanup that may have come to us from an incident we experienced during a procurement where it happened frequently enough that I said, we probably need to clarify this a bit more in the ordinance. To your point a moment ago, there is no change to the $30,000 bidding threshold, and there is no change in the level of department head discretionary spending. That's primarily it. And as I said, it's really a lot of the red line is just the elimination of the office and then the requirements of the ordinance to disperse those responsibilities to the two pieces of it that are going to be in the ordinance as it sits after approval.
Okay, thank you. That's, I accept that explanation, Scott, of why we did this. Thank you. I just didn't understand why we were doing it. Thank you.
Okay, that takes care of all the items removed. I just want to make a brief note as far as new and unfinished business. I will be asking for a motion to consolidate all of these. I will first ask if anybody wants to remove one of those items for discussion, but I think it'll be a lot easier for voting wise for us to create a kind of a mini consent agenda for new business so that we don't have to go one by one and approve them. So that's that. We do have need for executives. Hold on a second, wait a minute. We got administrator's report first. Scott, have at it.
All right, thank you. In December, we did a presentation on where the mental health board sales tax was tracking. And at that time, we anticipated it was going to be above where the last property tax levy was of $10,950,000. Not by much, but we said it's going to be above. I'm sorry to report that I was wrong in that presentation, because it's not slightly above, it's much above where that property tax levy was. At that time, I said it was going to be ending about $11 million. We ended up, or mental health board, I should say, ended up with $11,150,000 in sales tax for the fiscal year, because we got a final fiscal year reimbursement in. So what that does that translate to? $200,000 more than our last property tax levy, and it's sales tax, which sales tax grows. And with that, really excited to report that news and excited to be in error in December. So second thing, for those who have attended the People in Need Forum 2 Saturdays ago, it was fantastic. Thank you for coming out. I just wanted to report out, when I got there, probably, I don't know, about 9:20, the parking lot was full. I had to park, boy, I got some exercise in. But it's really overwhelming when you walk through that venue of the MCC gym, just full of service providers and understanding what is out there for our residents. It is overwhelming to see. And it's also a celebration of McHenry County's spirit of collaboration and coordination, because all these social services work together. and they fill in their individual needs, and then they try to, and because they're all together, they understand what each other does, and they don't step on each other's toes, because then they focus on what they do and do best. I just want to thank McHenry County College for hosting that event, for opening up its doors, and as I understand, Mental Health Board was the main driver to bring this all together, and I think Member Altoff has something to add to this.
Okay, so historical perspective, because all of us people who actually know the information won't be around maybe much longer. It was actually the Mental Health Board. It was Bev Thomas, who was the president at the time, who started this. The original purpose of People in Need was to bring the providers together. So as Mr. Hartman just stated, Administrator Hartman just stated, so that they would not duplicate services and they could work collaboratively together. It now has morphed into not only that purpose, but to also be open to the public. So people who need those services or who send people for those services have a much better scope and understanding of exactly those services provided. But can I ask you also to talk about the fact that CMAP was in attendance for a purpose as well?
Yes, they are. CMAP is working on the county's housing readiness plan, and they had a presence there. They were talking to people. They're really engaging. Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you. As per the request of the Housing Task Force. So they were out there. Also want to point out too that Congressman Foster visited, and he spent some time going to each booth to understand what is provided and offered in McHenry County. So we're really pleased and appreciate his visit. So the next item I want to report on Tuesday morning, CFO Weiss and I were on a call with Moody's Rating. Moody's is the rating service that provides the county's AAA bond rating. And it was really to do an update of that rating. So they asked lots of questions. It was about an hour-long conversation. And the key areas of the discussion focused around the liquidity of the county's funds. So that's important to note. We talked about the strong economic activity in the county, what's been going on and what we see in the future, and that was very positive. But just kind of into our previous discussion, they did talk a lot about fund balances. And we say that because just for you to be aware of how important fund balances are to our bond rating. And it's very clear and evident by the questions they were asking and the information they were looking for that, that is something we have to be mindful of. That AAA bond rating is in part because of healthy fund balances. So changes in fund balances, could have an effect. So please be mindful of that. We do have a follow-up call scheduled for Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, where they're going to take the information they received, have some more questions, and then it goes through the process, and then they'll issue out a new bond rating. So just want you to know that this is underway. Carrie, did I miss anything on that?
We had a good news that came through about a grant we received, right?
Oh, that's going to be her.
What's that?
Before we move off the Moody's, the reason for the re-rating, I'm sure you guys are wondering. There you go. It is because the McHenry County Conservation District is a discretely presented component unit in our financial statements, which really is saying that this board approves their budget. And so the Conservation District is going out for debt. And so because of that process, Moody's is going to reissue ours in response to that because of the financial oversight component.
Thank you for that. And that actually, the MCCD budget will be going in your next meeting cycle. I think PED will be reviewing it in March. So
that's what they told us.
That's what they told us.
Mr. Hendricks?
So does that mean the conservation district, like if they take on, I'm not saying they are, but if they theoretically took on like an exorbitant amount of debt, that it affects the county's credit rating agency because we're the final approver of it?
We're a final approver of their budget, and I have to look at the statute.
Okay.
To see exactly, it was more so because this county board approves their budget.
Okay.
But how our finances are interconnected, I think they're still separate, but we will get back to you.
They are, and that's one thing that we talked about too, is because there's a statute that governs the Conservation District. They were gonna dig into that statute a little bit further. We talked a little bit about the difference between that and other types of, forest preserve districts, so on and so forth. So they have a little bit more research to do in that respect.
Understood. If you could let me or the board know, that would be greatly appreciated, because I'm curious.
Ms. Greeno?
Yeah, excuse me, because I'm in such shock from what I thought I just heard. I may be asking the same question. Did you just say that the Conservation District is going out for more debt, for debt? They're requesting, they're seeking debt funding? Did you just say that?
I don't know. I thought it was because they're issuing new debt, but I will get some clarification.
I thought they were paying off their debt.
Yeah, they just paid off their debt. And then they just sought a higher levy. Yes, they just had a referendum increase. Okay, okay.
We'll get some further clarification.
Okay, yeah, just to clarify, thank you.
Then the final item I had to report, actually, I'm gonna turn this right over to Alicia. Alicia, do you have any good news for us?
As a matter of fact, I do have some good news. I was in contact with Congresswoman Schakowsky's office yesterday, and I have official word that McHenry County is receiving $1.2 million in community project funding from the federal government. This has been on our legislative program for 2 years now, and it's finally here, coming to fruition, so congratulations.
And what's that
The
to
money is
fund?
for the McHenry County Police Social Work Program headquarters build-out. There is a process.
I told her not to go into the process.
There is a process. Because it is a grant, we do have to go through the grants.gov system, fill out the paperwork and that sort of thing. So there will be a bit of a delay on it, but again, it is money that is coming to McHenry County.
If anybody wants to see Alicia's happy dance, she'll be doing that in her office in about 15 minutes.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you all. We do have need for executive session for settlement of claims, per 5 ILCS 120/2. So I will entertain a motion to enter executive session. Ms. Altoff makes the motion, Mr. Gottemoller seconds. Kathy, could you call the roll, please?
Collins. Gottemoller. Greeno. Hendricks. Kaminsky. Kearns. Krieger. Kunkel. Sager. Shorten. Scala. Smith. Sullivan. Thomas. Van Hoff. Von Bergen. Hendricks.
Yes. I'll entertain a motion to enter open session. Mr. Scala makes the motion, Mr. Kunkel seconds. Kathy, could you call the roll, please?
Altough. Here. Campbell. Here. Collins.
Here.
Godemaller. Reno. Here. Hendricks.
Present.
Kaminsky.
Present.
Burns. Krieger. Kunkel.
Here.
Sager. Shorten.
Here.
Scala. Smith. Sullivan.
Here.
Thomas.
Here.
And Hoff. Here. Tom Bergen. Here. Hewer.
Here. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Scala makes the motion. Mr. Kaminsky seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Have a good day.